Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of a hot cross cunt to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. And the logical fallacy we're looking at this week is assuming a tell. It's a very Easter time.
Yeah, it's nearly Good Friday.
So why not? So get in the hot cross cunt.
I was a bit worried about it because hot cross buns are not as well known in America, where the majority of our listeners come from. They are traditionally an English Good Friday item, although the Commonwealth, the Australia, Canada, there's some. Yeah. But yeah, I have read that in recent years that the kind of more cosmopolitan bakeries in places like New York and LA have started selling hot cross buns as well. So, maybe a bit of a niche reference. Yeah.
But it's and their hot cross buns appear in the shops like immediately after the Christmas holidays. Yeah. So yeah. Like, you think, wait a minute, it's only just been born, and you wish you're kind of warning, don't get too cocky, lad. This is what ends up happening to you. All right, thanks. Yeah.
So, assuming a tell. This is episode 121, which is 11 squared. So it's an 11 episode, and
yes,
because sometimes you accidentally create a tradition on 11 multiples. We do.
Did it happen on our 11th?
No, it didn't happen until 44. 44 was the first one, but then it accidentally happened almost on the next kind of 11, and then so on. So yeah.
So now we deliberately
now we're just stuck with
it's
it,
a tradition.
and we have to keep doing it. But yeah, so what we do is a fallacy that we've identified, is not one that you will typically find on lists on the internet of fallacies. Yeah. So assuming a tell is the name that I have given to one, which is about when you identify something which you believe gives you some kind of secret knowledge, a thing that people say or do, or a thing that will point you in a particular direction of information that you then rely on in providing evidence for or reasoning for the point that you're trying to make.
So, and is the assumption in that assuming a tell that it's a universal thing that everybody knows exists? And you're the only one that's party to.
Not that so much necessarily, but that you are assuming that the tell is going to be reliable.
Okay.
That it will reliably give you that information, and you can assume that is evidence for something.
Right. And therefore, that's a strong reason for their reaching the conclusion that you reach.
Yeah. So our first example from Trump is a video blog that he did back in 2012, I think, after Dick Cheney wrote a memoir. And Trump's not a fan of Cheney, as it turns out.
And I could tell that Cheney was lying because he said, as I remember it, he was discussing the situation where they were talking about going into Iraq. And what happened is Colin Powell said, we all made the decision. And Cheney said that he made the decision with Bush. And when asked about Colin Powell's version, Cheney said, well, that's the way I remember it. Well, when somebody says that to me, that means they're lying.
Yeah, and it's not like he's ever said that
No,
himself.
of course not. No.
Of course, no.
To be honest, I did do a quick check to see if I could find a good example of him saying it. And I couldn't really, because I think he probably is someone who more commonly just says, no, this is how it happened. Saying as I remember it, or this is how I remember it, acknowledging that someone else remembers it differently, essentially, is allowing for the possibility that you might be wrong.
So he's never going to do that.
What it's really doing isn't necessarily proof of lying, which is what he's claiming, but it's saying, I accept that you see it this way. That's not how I see it. That's not how I remember things happening. I disagree with you, but I'm not prepared to say you're wrong and I'm right. Because that would be very rude apart from anything else. So I will So I will just say, well, I remember it differently. And,
and it's also it kind of puts in a bit of plausible deniability, because you'd say, well, that's what I remember, and then if it's proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that the way that you remember it is wrong, you say, well, I only remembered it that way.
Absolutely. Whereas I think Trump more commonly just goes, no, this is how it happened, and then when you've proven him wrong that isn't how it happened, he continues to say, no, it definitely happened like that.
Definitely happened like that, and therefore you're wrong. So, and he's not troubled by appearing to be rude.
Not at all.
No, because he's never rude. He's just right. Fair enough.
So our second example from Trump is when he was talking about one of the many ways that he could tell that the 2020 election was rigged.
Other witnesses have testified to seeing thousands of so-called pristine ballots with no creases or folds, all voting for Biden. When you have no fold, it means it wasn't mailed. It means it was a fraud.
So the claim is that if you have pristine ballots that don't have folds in, they can't possibly have been through the mail system. So therefore, it's a fraud, and that's just you can make that assumption. That's not what investigators said, in responding to this.
Weirdly,
because the claim was made by a few people that they saw pristine ballots that didn't have any folds in, and claimed, as various people claimed mad things about what might be fraud and what might not. This was one of the many things that was investigated in Georgia when they did kind of hand recounts and audits and stuff. And I think the Secretary of State there, Raffensperger, and also, is it Gabe? I want to call him Gabe Sterling. Is that right? The elections supervisor there. Even cyber ninjas, when they were looking at the various things, and they were looking at them like under microscopes, looking for kind of bamboo shards to prove that they'd come from China and things like that.
Right.
First of all, they didn't find significant numbers of ballots without folds.
Right.
And secondly, the Secretary of State said there are several reasons why you might have ballots without folds. If, for example, there would be anyone who filled in an emergency ballot on the day when when they thought there might be an issue, and they did a kind of provisional one, that wouldn't have a fold in it because it hadn't been through the mailing process. And also mailed ones that had been damaged or had some other issue, they would do a duplicate version, basically, so that it would go through the machines properly.
Yeah.
And that would be one that would be pristine.
Be mailed. Yeah.
So if people saw a few of them, no big deal, because you'd see a few of them normally. If you'd seen a lot, that might have been an issue, but no one saw a lot. So
right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. And no amount of him remembering it otherwise. Yeah. Well, we'll do that. And it was Gabe. Yeah, it was Gabe Sterling. You were right. Yes. But the thing is that Trump reaches for those kind of tells in the face of all the evidence to the contrary that just says, well, yes, there were some without folds. There were some, not a lot of them. And this is why it was the system itself making sure that everybody who voted got a genuine vote, because there would have been complaints, would there not, if people's votes that got damaged in the mail or squashed in the process of being taken out of the mail, sufficient to not go through the machine, they would then complain.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Where's the link between them being fraudulent and for Biden?
Well, yes. No, that was a claim that was made. Well, in all of these cases, when they said, "Oh yeah, these ones were delivered at the last minute," or these ones were, made of bamboo or whatever, they're always all for Biden. Those ones.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, every single thing that has been claimed about the ballots in the 2020 election, and that anyone suggests is proof of fraud, has either been shown to not be true or explained by some other completely normal process of the election.
Yeah. There's no way to counter this, because he would just keep coming up with the stuff in the face of all the evidence to the contrary.
I think with someone like Trump, there's no way to counter it.
Right.
I think there are people who, as with most fallacies that we discuss, there are people who do it deliberately and there are people who do it accidentally. And I think when people do it accidentally. There's some crossover with the toupee fallacy, where if you think that you can always spot a toupee, and then you find out that someone who you didn't know had a toupee has a toupee, that proves you wrong, and you might adjust your thinking. And in the same way, if you have assumed that you know someone's tell that proves that they're lying, and then you call them on it and it turns out they're telling the truth, you might adjust your thinking if you are trying to be a good critical thinker. If you're not, and you deliberately do this like Trump does, then it will never make any difference. No amount of proving him wrong will prove to him that he's wrong.
Yes, of course, because he would just say, well, I don't remember it that way. So, wait a minute, that's the tell you used about Cheney. Oh, no.
I don't remember doing that.
I don't remember saying that. Yeah, that's right, here it is. Oh, well, it's obviously been faked. You can tell it's been faked because it's not folded.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics corner.
Well, interestingly, the whole "that's not how I remembered it" thing has been uppermost in the life of Boris recently, because he's been up in front of the select committee convened that consists of, I think, 4 Tory MPs, 2 Labour MPs, and a couple of others, and they are looking at whether during the whole of the Partygate thing, for which he received a fine. So the police did over 100 cases where they had broken the rules about not gathering during lockdown and particularly not having parties indoors with lots of other people unsocially distanced, when the rules were that you're not allowed to do that. So we know that happened. We know that he lied about that happening. What we're now investigating is another kind of nuanced version of the greased pig trying to get out of it, as to whether he misled Parliament, which is a greater crime than being an actual fined criminal. Mm-hmm. It's a greater crime to have misled Parliament and brought the whole notion of Parliament into disrepute. So he's been up against the Select Committee, who've been going over the same stuff again. And so he opened the 4-hour-long thing. It's an interesting thing to watch because he just gets angry, and several tells appear when he's trying to prove his point. He does the desk thumping thing and points by using his clenched fist and his thumb, because he never points because that's rude, but he does all that stuff. So there are those tells when he's on dodgy ground. He's doing that, and I just know that. And but they don't work quite so well in audio format. So, but one of the defences that he offered was, whilst he's lying about whether he lied about the parties, and he invoked a sure tell as part of his defence.
That we would have held illicit events in number 10, while allowing these events to be immortalised by an official photographer, is staggeringly implausible. There are a couple of photos where the event is captured on Zoom as well as by the official photographer, which only reinforces the point. If we had an event with it we believed was illicit or unauthorised, why would we have it on Zoom when you never quite know who is on the other side?
So basically he's saying you can tell it wasn't a party because official photographers were invited. So with all these photos of parties that we've seen with our own eyes, no, it's a dead giveaway that it wasn't a party, because here is the tell. We all know that if you invite a photographer to an event, then it's not an event.
No, it's not a party. Especially if it's just lunch at your desk, basically.
Yeah.
I always get an official photographer if I'm getting a sandwich from Tesco's and taking it back to my desk. And bring the photographer.
Particularly if you've got lots of other people having lunch at the same desk.
Yeah. Well, you need the photographer so that everyone knows it isn't a party.
Yes, exactly. So, so that's the giveaway. Not far from it. The giveaway isn't the evidence of our own eyes looking at the photos that the photographer took.
It's very much a kind of a Trumpian thing of I can't possibly be breaking the law because I'm doing it out in the open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can tell that I'm not. Who would do this? It's frankly implausible. Yeah. So it's just yet more squeaking between the the fag paper gaps between various truths. He's just running out of space fundamentally. Yeah, because the tells that we use to define a party are those that are in the photos. Cake, bottles, tinsel, hats, people
revelers.
Standing up, revelers, people toasting one another, all of that, yes. And at the time, there's the tweet contemporary with this going on. Johnny Marr, the guitarist who was once in the Smiths, assumed a tell about Boris in a tweet which was dated 7th September 2021, when he says, "How do you know when Boris is lying?" Answer: his mouth is open. So there's the tell, to which somebody additionally replied, "He's awake." So, how do you tell Boris is lying? He's awake. So don't just assume the tell that he's talking. He could also be lying when he's silent.
He could be lying with sign language.
Yes. Well, I also suspect he lies in his dreams, so it doesn't matter whether he's awake or not. So my second example is, and that horrifyingly there are 5 clips for this bit, but they're all short, is the one that the media use. They assume a tell regarding the continued employment of politicians, and that is, "I have full confidence in." So if somebody says that, you that's how you tell somebody's
about to get fired.
Fired, yeah. So Sky News' interview with Greg Hands, who was the then International Trade Minister, on the 14th of October 2022, talking about short-lived Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng flying back from the US.
I know the Prime Minister has got total confidence in Kwasi Kwarteng. I've worked very closely with Kwasi. He's an incredibly capable person.
There we go. So the Prime Minister has total confidence in Kwasi Kwarteng. Indeed, Kwasi Kwarteng said this.
Absolutely 100%. I'm not going anywhere.
And that was on the 13th of October 2022. And yep, he was sacked on the 14th of October, on the very day that Greg Hands said that the Prime Minister had full confidence in him. So, however, I also noticed studious efforts to avoid this tell, and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, who pointedly do not express full confidence in. So perhaps not expressing full confidence in is the new expressing full confidence in. And this seems to be certainly the tell for The Guardian. Under the heading, Liz Truss twice refuses to say she has confidence in Kwasi Kwarteng. And here she is talking about the same doomed bus fodder, Kwasi Kwarteng, on the 4th of October.
Viewers will have heard you not answer the question about whether you trust your Chancellor, given the scale of the mistake that you say he made. Are you sure you don't want to say you trust your Chancellor?
I work very, very closely with my Chancellor. We're very focused on getting the economy growing. And that's what people in Britain want. We're facing difficult economic times. We're seeing rising interest rates around the world, very serious issues with energy prices and inflation. And we've acted decisively. If you remember, people were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We put in place the energy price guarantee. The average household won't have to pay more than around £2,500. And what we're focused on is getting on with the job.
OK, viewers will note that you still haven't said you trust your Chancellor.
Yes, she's saying everything except, yes, I trust the Chancellor. And you can hear in the background, she's on a building site. You can hear the sounds of her administration being dismantled as she says it. 10 days later, Kwasi's gone. And so similarly, the Sun newspaper used the same tell on the 26th of January 2023. Their heading was, Prime Minister fails to place full confidence in Zahawi. He was the Chancellor under Johnson for about an afternoon. And this is their short tell that Nadeem Zahawi is for the chop.
Someone who's here today is Nadeem Zahawi. Do you have confidence in him?
When it comes to Nadeem Zahawi or anyone else, what I believe in is due process, and that's why I appointed an independent advisor to look into the questions that have been raised, investigate the situation fully, establish the facts and provide advice to me.
Hardly a ringing endorsement of the man he made party chairman.
Yeah, there it is. So, yes, he doesn't say, yes, I have full confidence in, knowing full well. So that was on the 26th of January. On the 29th of January 2023, Zahawi was sacked as Tory party chair by Rishi, who appointed him as Tory party chair. And Greg Hands, who we heard earlier, was appointed as his successor. But ever the traditionalist, Nadeem Zahawi himself had used the old-fashioned "I have every confidence in" on the 25th of June 2021 when asked about Matt Hancock's continued position as Health Secretary following the discovery of his affair with his secretary in breach of lockdown guidelines.
And the Prime Minister has full confidence in the Secretary of State. He says the matter closed. He has a big job to do.
Do you have full confidence?
I have every confidence in Matt Hancock.
Every confidence, yeah. Hancock resigned on the 26th of June 2021. And so CCTV cameras were there to catch Hancock grappling his secretary in contravention of the lockdown guidelines. So according to Boris, that's the tale which proves it didn't happen. So anyway, yeah. And recently, both Hancock and Zahawi were caught in a sting set up led by donkeys, in which they told a fake overseas company looking for advisors that their daily rate for consultancy will be £10,000, despite the Tory party's recent calls for tightening of rules around second jobs. But I maintain every confidence in them as fully committed to their constituents.
Tell me why you cry and why you lie to me. Tell me why you cry and why you lie to me. Well, I gave you everything I had, but you left me sitting on my own. Did you have to treat me oh so bad? All I do is hang my head and moan. Tell me why you cry and why you lie to me. Tell me why you cry and why you lie to me. If there's something that I've said or done, let me pretend to apologize. If you're gonna really can't go on forcing out these tears from my eyes, tell me why you lied and why you lied to me. Tell me why you find all of those wild fallacies.
Beatles there, of course, with Tell Me Why.
And in the Fallacy and Why, we'd like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective. And the first example we have this time is actually the reason that I kind of identified this fallacy initially, because it is a 1957 film called The Admirable Crichton. And I ended up rewatching this because during our Oscars marathon special, I watched Triangle of Sadness. Which was terrible. And
complete rip-off.
And the storyline reminded me of this film.
Yeah.
And this is just so much better. A rich family with their servants were shipwrecked on an island, and the bulk of the film is seeing them on the island and the kind of servants being more capable, and essentially it kind of flips the traditional British stately home style hierarchy of the kind of master of the house being in charge. When they get back and go back into kind of polite society, the local aristocrat baroness type woman is curious what happened on the island.
George, listen more than anyone begins to answer me with "the fact is."
But why, Mother?
Because that is usually the beginning of a lie.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that actually reminds me of I'm Not Racist, But, and then they're spectacularly racist.
Yeah, so as tends to be the case when this fallacy appears in films and things like that, she happens to be right in this instance.
Right,
that when the people she questions about what went on the island, they kind of vacillate and just say, well, you see, the fact is that... and then make something up.
Yeah.
So,
it would be interesting now. I'm going to go back and watch the 4 Hours of Boris to see whether at any point he says the fact of the matter is, or I mean the other tell which I could have done. Suddenly there are so many of them. Having heard her is the one. Let me be perfectly clear. And then they're utterly
completely
opaque.
obfuscate everything.
Yeah.
There's also, there's Trump saying "believe me,"
and then says something completely unbelievable.
But the thing is, since he almost always lies about everything, It isn't really a tell. It's just something he often adds on to a lie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It's not a way of identifying a lie.
No, it's a bit like if you put something in brackets at the end of a sentence, it verifies the truth of the sentence. Brackets. It really does. Close brackets.
Yeah.
Or the thing that you often have written when you write stuff, and then you say, "Oh yeah, no, definitely," and then you put in brackets, "I think." That's right, which completely undermines it. It's that kind of Believe me, in brackets at the end. Yeah. Don't do that. Look, I was completely with you up to that point. Now I'm not so sure.
So our second example comes from Scream 6, the latest Scream movie, in which the kind of, I guess, new final girl, Sam, because Sydney is no longer in the series. She sees occasionally visions of her father, Billy Loomis, one of the killers from the first film.
Right.
So she's in a situation here where she has kind of got into a place where they think they're safe from the killers and has been told by another character, "Don't worry, you're safe."
You know you're not safe here. Whenever someone says we're safe here, it means you're not.
Yeah. Because that's the thing about the whole Scream series, is it takes all those horror movie slasher serial stalker things, and then just like when they go into the room and go, "Okay, let's split up." They go, "No, don't do that." Yeah,
but they lampshade it. One of the characters will always say, "No, why would we split up?" You know what happens in that movie?
Or let's go upstairs. But when the lights have gone out, no, we'll be safer up there. No, we won't.
So and that's essentially what he's doing, is drawing attention to the fact that in these kinds of films, whenever anyone says it's okay, we're safe, you shouldn't assume you're safe. You should assume something is going to happen.
Yeah,
so.
But it's like the thing in the Star Wars stuff when Harrison Ford always says, "I've got a bad feeling about this," and you just think, "Okay, don't tell us that, because we were all happy until that point, and now we know that thing we were suspecting
nothing interesting was going to happen.
No, that thing we were suspecting might occur, and put you all into terrible danger. No, it was all fine." You chased it away, you've hidden, and then you just go, "I got a bad feeling about this." It turns out they're hiding in the mouth of a monster or something. Yeah.
And our final example, I don't have a clip for, because this is more of a kind of real world example. And this is the story of Chris Moneymaker, who is the brilliantly and truly named, that's his real name, Moneymaker, and he, in 2003...
Nominative determinism right there.
He won the World Series of Poker. But the thing that was different about that was the fact that up until that point, the people who won World Series of Poker tended to be professionals. And he was an accountant from Tennessee who won a $40 online poker tournament, the prize of which was a seat at in the World Series.
Oh, wow, yeah.
He'd never played live poker before, like against other people at a table, and he just kept winning. And he kept staying in over the various days of the tournament. Yeah. To the point where, when there were 12 players left, he was playing a guy called Dutch Boyd and knocked him out of the tournament. And Dutch mentioned to him that he had noticed his tell and said that whenever he was bluffing, he would hold his breath and flare out his nostrils.
Okay, yeah.
And Chris Moneymaker didn't kind of know whether that was real or not, or if that's something he did, but he was like, "Okay, I don't know really. I've never done this before. I can't understand how I've managed to get this far." But from that point on in the tournament, he just did it occasionally whether he was bluffing or not.
Right.
To throw off any other players who might have identified that as a tell that he had.
Yeah.
So if there were others that had thought that's something he did, from that point, they definitely wouldn't be able to tell, because they would assume he was bluffing on hands where he was actually holding strong cards. And in the end, he made it to the final two and beat Sammy Farha and won $2.5 million.
Wow. So the moral is, if you spot somebody's tell, don't tell them.
Don't tell them.
Don't tell them to tell, which is basically the plot of the bit that leads Daniel Craig in Casino Royale to have a heart attack and have to go and plunge a thing into himself in the Aston Martin. Yeah, because doesn't he spot the tell and then he tells
of Le Chiffre?
Yeah. And who did he tell? Topol? No, because whoever the guy that anyway him. So the moral of the story is, unless you want to have a heart attack in an Aston Martin, that's right, have to reboot yourself remotely. Don't tell someone their tell. You just use it to your advantage. Yeah. But fair play to Moneymaker that he do it to his advantage.
Yeah,
that's perfect, isn't it? Has he still got all his money, or is he?
No,
is he given up poker?
He didn't end up having much of his money left at all afterwards, because when he got his seat, because it's a $10,000 seat essentially at the table, he convinced, I think, his dad and a friend to kind of half stake him, so they paid him some money because he thought he wasn't going to get anywhere at all. Yeah. So he ended up having to give them quite a lot of the money and pay quite a lot of it in taxes. And then he got divorced a couple of years later because he was being sponsored by PokerStars, because that's who he got in the tournament with. And PokerStars wanted him to go around the world doing poker stuff. And his wife was like, no, don't want you to do that. So he was like, well, I kind of really want to do that. Yeah. So they got divorced and she got the rest of the money, essentially. So he ended up, I mean, he's still a professional poker player now, but so he's kind of going around doing stuff like that. He goes and does talks about his journey to poker stardom. And the thing is, if it wasn't for him and that phenomenon that happened in 2003, that was what brought World Series of Poker and kind of live people watching poker on TV to the masses. So that was the beginning of the boom of Hold'em on TV and that kind of stuff, because it really wasn't. It was a niche thing that people didn't watch as a spectator sport at the time, really, in large numbers. But that gave people the sense that, well, hey, if he could do it, maybe I could, and got into it.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
You see, because I already know which one it will be, just from the fact that you said one of which I made up. It's a big giveaway, that. Not all of the 3 are true, that you're, in fact, trying to sneak in what amounts to a lie in amongst the truths without me noticing. Well, you see, let me tell you, I'm on to your little game because of that tell right at the beginning.
I will say that I don't really do it anymore, but I consciously was trying as hard as I possibly could when reading them out in the early days to just try and be as kind of neutral as possible, so that I wasn't giving something away, because I feared that in my voice there might be something that you could identify as a tell. That you could see which one I was.
Well, plainly you
reading
can see
while thinking,
from my score.
He's not going to get this one.
Plainly, I saw through it. 50% of the time.
I'm not so worried about it anymore.
No. I know, that's the depressing thing. So all those 50 I got right at the beginning. Latterly, it's made no difference at all. I'm concentrating so much on what could he have possibly done. I've forgotten about what's that thing I once learned that actually, in the art of filmmaking, it's the words, the music, and the dance. So yes, it's the words themselves, and then the music is the way that people say the stuff, and the dance is what they're doing whilst they're saying it. So you've got to pay attention to that. And filmmaking is all about paying attention to the music and the dance, not necessarily the words. So I don't know how I continue to get employment as a filmmaker on the basis of this game. This is my day off. See, that's my only excuse.
That's fine. So these are from an interview that Trump did with Sean Hannity. Although he announced his candidacy for 2024 a while ago now, several months ago, he hasn't really done anything until he did his kind of first big rally in Waco last weekend. In the 30th anniversary of the Branch Davidian
That's right.
compound siege.
That'll be the way to turn up.
Yeah, that was. It was clearly commemorating
with an IRS jacket.
Yeah.
Yes,
he played kind of footage of the January 6th insurrection on the screens behind, and while they sang the January 6th choir's version of the national anthem or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's clearly invoking anti-government. Did
he burst
violence
through the wall in a tank that was spraying kind of some sort of gas?
He might as well have done.
Yeah, and then set fire to it.
But among his kind of official beginnings of his proper campaigning, was a visit back to Fox News and an interview, the softest of all interviews with Sean Hannity. And so these are some answers that he gave. He was asked about whether his thinking had evolved on mail-in ballots and whether actually Republicans should use mail-in ballots. And he said, mail-in ballots are automatically corrupt. If you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have a very dishonest election. France had mail-in ballots. They had to go away from it. They had an election. They went back to paper ballots. And by 10 o'clock in the evening, everybody was happy. It was announced and that was it. You want paper ballots, you want same-day voting, ideally, because we have elections where they sit around for 62 days.
Okay. See, that's immediately a lie because, in the evening everyone was happy in France. Well, really.
He was asked about Biden's handling of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And said, you could end up in a nuclear world war, which will make World War I and World War II look like patty cakes, okay? This, unbelievable, because we have people that don't know what they're doing. But if it's not solved, I will have it solved in 24 hours with Zelensky and with Putin, and there's a very easy negotiation to take place. But I don't want to tell you what it is, because then I can't use that negotiation. It'll never work.
Right, that's handy, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, you can fix it really easy, but I'm not going to tell you because then that would ruin the easy fix. Yeah. Well, that's convenient. Yes. And Sean Hannity was straight down his throat saying, I can see that you're plainly lying. No.
And number 3, he was asked about cancel culture.
Yeah.
And he said, they're trying to cancel conservative voices and shut down free speech, and it's a direct attack on our democracy. We need to fight back, Sean. We need to be louder and more aggressive than ever before. We need to call them out for what they are, a bunch of socialist, America-hating, freedom-sucking, cancel culture-loving lunatics. We need to take our country back and make America great again, like I did when I was in office, and we can't let the radical left win.
No, he's fond of making those portmanteau hyphenated things, American hating, freedom sucking, cancel culture loving lunatics. There's all sorts of lovely alliteration going on there. If only he knew that that's what was happening, he might do it deliberately. Okay. Like what I did almost there, isn't it? Okay. Oh dear. So there's something about the nuclear world war thing. With that, see, it's that Trump-like sudden change of direction where he goes, "This unbelievable," because he's forgotten what he was going to say, and then some other train of thought steamrolled in. But that might be the tell, which means it's not real. Oh dear. Okay, on that basis alone, I'm going to say that number 2 is the one that you made up.
Okay, and of the other 2, which are you more convinced by?
Oddly, cancel culture loving lunatic, number 3.
Okay, so before I tell you whether that is in fact real or not, I will say that I lied a little bit earlier when I said that these are 2 which are real and 1 I made up, because I didn't actually make up the third one.
Okay.
The third one is from ChatGPT.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
I asked it for a kind of response to a question by Sean Hannity in the style of Trump.
Nice. Yeah.
So that is what we're looking for, is the one that ChatGPT made up, which you think is number 2.
I'm not convinced
since you thought I did it, basically.
Yeah.
But 3 you're confident with, and number 3 is
the one
fake news.
That's the one that ChatGPT. Oh no! Cancel culture loving lunatics. That's excellent. I was playing with ChatGPT only the other day. I should have known. Wow.
Thing is, it first off, when I was asking, give me an example of a discussion between Sean Hannity and Trump about this topic and stuff, and they were quite boring responses, like an actual politician would.
Okay,
do.
Yeah.
And so I said to ChatGPT, "This is quite boring. Can you make him sound more angry and unhinged?"
Weirdly,
and this is what it came up
Trump.
With. So yeah,
wow, that's excellent, isn't it? Golly, I did one recently where I asked it to give me a review of the famous UK band The Outbursts, and so it came up with this whole bunch of horse shit about the Outbursts. He clearly didn't know who. In fact, he said, "I don't know about the Outbursts in the UK." And being a language-based AI, I'm not in touch with the sensations that it might generate. But and then it goes through this thing, and I said, "Okay, that's great. Can you now write a song in the style of the Outbursts?" And it wrote this terrible punk song. It was awful. But there was one bit which said something. Keep on rocking. The rich get richer. Their pockets keep popping.
That's quite good.
And you think, great. And so I said, that's quite good. I particularly like their pockets are popping. And it said their pockets are popping is a motif that appears a lot in punk lyrics. Because it's at the basis of the class struggle and the which informs a lot of the anger.
It's great how much ChatGPT just completely bluffs stuff.
Yeah,
just completely makes stuff up and then pretends it's real.
Yeah. It's great. Brilliant.
So I also asked ChatGPT, this was a few weeks ago now, for some suggestions of insults that I can call Trump at the beginning of the show.
Right.
So I will be peppering those through the next few episodes.
Oh yeah.
And I've found it difficult to get it to do it again because they turned something on that means it's hard to get it to tell you insults for people.
Oh, okay.
Because it wants you to be nice and respectful to people.
Yeah.
But I managed to get it on a good day.
Okay.
So
can you be a little more angry and a bit more unhinged? Yeah. And it comes out with a perfectly reasonable and
completely convincing. Yeah.
Utterly convincing.
So there you go.
Wow.
Which
and
means
such lovely phrases as popping pockets and cancel culture loving lunatics.
Yeah. Which means that number one is indeed real.
Right.
Mail-in ballots are automatically corrupt. If you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have very dishonest elections. France had mail-in ballots. They had to go away from it. They had an election.
They went back to paper ballots.
Back to paper ballots, and by 10 o'clock in the evening, everybody was happy. It was announced, and that was it. You want paper ballots. You want same-day voting, ideally, because, we have elections where they sit around for 62 days.
None of that is true. I mean, that's a parameter you could put into ChatGPT. Just give me an answer. Make sure none of it is true. Yeah, and then convince me that it is.
So,
wow.
I think the thing he's talking about with 62 days is early voting, for example. When you start mail-in voting, sometime, like the most it can be away might be 62 days away from the election.
Okay.
So, I guess those ballots are sitting around, but that doesn't make... You can't fraud them during that time.
No, you can't do fraud to them. No, because they're locked away more safely than his top secret documents under his bed at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, they don't just shove them in a paper bag and leave them in the corner of a room somewhere.
Marked do not tamper with voting slips.
And as for France, okay, they did have mail-in ballots. They had mail-in ballots until 1975. That was when they stopped doing mail-in ballots. Yeah. They haven't done it since. And they didn't go back to paper ballots. When they did mail-in, what the fuck do you think they were mailing? They were mailing paper.
They were mailing baguettes. They were just sending slices of bread And if it was sliced in one particular way, you voted for one party. If you sliced it across the baguette, you voted for another party.
Yeah.
So they just had all this bread arriving in the mail. And by the time it got there, some of it was a bit old and stale, and you couldn't really tell which way it had been sliced, because we all know you don't slice a baguette, you tear bits off it. So some people didn't have bread knives.
Yeah.
And that I got from ChatGPT.
And of course, it isn't like 10 o'clock that night.
No.
They know the answer and everyone's happy.
Yeah, yeah.
That isn't true. What is true is that evening they do say who is likely to be the front runners, at least, because the presidential election in France tends to be between quite a lot of people. It's not, they don't have a primaries which bring it down to one person per party and then those go against each other. It's I think the last one was like 12 people or something like that.
Yep.
But then on election night, you'll know who are the two who are likely to go through to the next stage, if there is going to be a next stage.
Yeah.
Which there often is.
Yeah.
Because unless one person gets 50% of the vote or more, then it's the top two go to a runoff.
Yeah.
So what they do is they count them in the individual polling stations in the local towns, which is very easy to do because it's only the president being elected. Whereas in the US, they've got, presidents, senators, congress people, water supervisor, for 16 different things, and they're all
on the same day.
And each county has different people being elected in their counties and different rules for how they mark the ballots, and different. It's all different everywhere. In France, it's one rule. Everyone has exactly the same ballot. You only vote for who you want to be president, so they just put them in a pile, and then they count the piles.
And then they tell somebody at Central Control.
They literally call up and go, we got this
how
many
this
we've
many for
got.
Macron, this many for Marine Le Pen.
Yeah, they add them up, and it's still, despite the fact they only have like 35 million voters, it still takes the next day before they can actually say who's won it.
Yes.
Whereas in the US, it's 3 times as many voters, ridiculous number of different races, different rules.
Yeah, all of which
more voters.
These are total. Yeah.
Yeah, and they still get it done in like 4 days. Pretty much,
which in itself is unbelievable. That's the unbelievable bit. So the only way to streamline it some more would be to legislate that the voting system is the same in all of the states.
Yeah, have a fucking federal voting system,
which of course the Republicans,
the Democrats tried to do,
very keen on. Yeah,
and if you have mail-in ballots, which is fine and has not introduced fraud into any elections ever in any large numbers, let people start counting them before election day. Then you know how many there are before the in-day voting happens.
Yeah.
And you just add that day's voting to it. That's why it takes 4 days. It's because Republicans have stopped people from starting to count the mail-in ballots.
Yes, exactly.
But
then you see you can't claim a victory based on and then you can't claim.
No, it's all completely disingenuous.
Yeah. Exactly. If only he knew that word, he could alliterate it with something else, couldn't he? Or he could call Ron DeSantis.
Ron disingenuous.
Ron disingenuous. Yeah.
So number 2 was also real.
So the weird change of direction which I thought meant it was fake, is actually just true.
It's real.
You could end up in a nuclear world war, which will make World War I and World War II look like patty cakes, okay? This unbelievable, because we have people that don't know what they're doing. But if it's not solved, I will have it solved in 24 hours with Zelensky and with Putin. And there's a very easy negotiation to take place, but I don't want to tell you what it is because then I can't use that negotiation. It'll never work.
Yeah,
what could it possibly
you wouldn't want to save hundreds of thousands of lives between now and then by kind of publicly announcing the way to stop the war in 24 hours.
No, because what you want to do is wait for another year until you get into office, and then by which time people
it'll be almost
really
2
want
years
it to stop.
Because even if you were to get elected in November next year.
He won't be in office till 25. Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like the Chinese visit to Russia. All of the commentators have said, well, he's probably got up his sleeve a way for Putin to have the war, stop the war without losing face. And he's going to, that. But he's at the moment.
There isn't a way because he's fucked it completely.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
He's done a terrible job, and so now there isn't now a way to go like, oh yeah, that was what I was trying to do.
Yeah. That's right. It's a bit like a cat, heading to a wall and then jumping for and missing and then just styling it out.
Yeah.
Just go, oh yeah, no, I meant to miss it entirely. Yeah. No,
he's not got my miss.
Exactly. He's not got the kind of cat-like grace and cool that can get away with that. No amount of bareback horse riding, with your shirt off is going to make you as cool as a cat that's muffed a particularly long jump. No. And that's the solution that Trump is coming up with. How it's solved in 24 hours.
Yeah. So I vaguely remember he said he would beat ISIS in 24 hours, didn't he? Or something like that.
Yeah.
It took him a bit longer to not actually do that.
To not actually do it, yeah. Well, then of course he blamed it all on Obama for founding ISIS or Biden. Yeah. And they said, well, what you mean is, no, I actually mean that. Yeah.
So unfortunately, that means that you were
I've lost to a bloody robot.
GPT.
Yeah. It is.
It's basically, this is very much like when Deep Blue beat Kasparov, isn't it?
Exactly that. Yeah. Troubling
AI
moment.
has beaten you in this game, of which you are a master. And
exactly.
it's a new era.
Yeah, it's a whole new world. Do you find when you're talking to ChatGPT that you're quite polite?
Oh, very. Yeah. Because when AI eventually takes over, I want to be in the kind of the ones that
aren't immediately. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah. You said please and thank you.
Yeah. I for one welcome our AI overlords.
Yeah. I have nothing but respect for them. Yes. Thank you very much, GPT, for your contribution.
Yes, well done in this game.
Yes, no qualms at all losing out to what's obviously a higher intelligence. Yeah. Thank you.
So it's time for the part of the show, and this is one of the most exciting ones I think we've ever done of this part of the show.
Yeah.
Because it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called "A Trump Indictment is Not a Logical Fallacy." Because, holy fuck, he's literally just been indicted, like an hour ago.
Yeah.
Like just before we started recording.
Yeah.
This section was already called "A Trump Indictment is not a logical fallacy," but we were going to be talking about how he said he was going to be arrested and then nothing happened, and it was just him kind of spreading rumours and causing trouble and raising money and causing violence. And then it's fucking happened.
Yeah. So it's not going to pan out how he planned it, because he was saying, it's just another bit of a witch hunt, and he'd earned 1.5 million on the back of standing up saying they're just out to get me. It's ridiculous. And other people coming to his defense saying, so you're arresting him on business charges? Everybody does that kind of thing in business. It's politically motivated. And now it's happened, and he's kind of a little bit taken aback, so he's can't resort to any of those arguments.
Well, I mean, he's immediately come out and called it like a massive political prosecution and the worst in history and that kind of stuff. And just about everyone, Donald Jr., Ron DeSantis, Mike Pompeo, Eric Schmidt, and others have called Alvin Bragg a George Soros-backed prosecutor.
Right.
Which echoes things that Trump has been saying for the last kind of week or two.
Yeah.
There's a New York Times fact check that points out that Alvin Bragg's never actually met George Soros, but George Soros did give money to a group that supports criminal justice reforms and supported Bragg in the 2021 election. So he's not like his mentor
to do
or
it.
something.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like giving him money in order to bring this about, like Trump gave.
He supports a lot of democratic causes
to bring
because
about
he's a rich Democrat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Unlike Trump, who's just a rich businessman who doesn't want to be seen to have paid something like a sex worker some money to keep quiet about something, so he gives it to somebody else to do it for him. Yeah.
And then falsifies the business records, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I should say, the charges are still under seal. So, especially since this is so new, we don't actually know what the charges are yet.
Yeah.
The speculation has been over the past week or so that the most likely charge is falsifying business records, which would potentially be a misdemeanor, but might be a felony if it was done in the furtherance of another crime.
Yeah.
But he has now been indicted by the Manhattan grand jury. He will be, well, I would say he will be arrested, but realistically he will surrender. So they won't kind of, come and get him and bash down his door and bring him out in handcuffs, unfortunately, probably.
No.
He is expected to surrender to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office early next week. And but he will be processed, he will be fingerprinted and have a mugshot and possibly have DNA taken, which I'm curious whether... I don't think it probably
human.
will. No, but I mean, he's currently got the E. Jean Carroll case going on as well, which is a civil case.
Yes.
Defamation case. Yeah. Because largely it's a civil case because the statute of limitations on the actual rape that he's accused of has run out. But there were attempts to get him to voluntarily hand over his DNA for that case, which he agreed to do at the point where the judge had said, right, we're stopping evidence collection now and moving on to the next stage of the case, and I will not accept any more delay.
Right.
And at that point, Trump's lawyers went, we'll voluntarily give some DNA if you give us another few weeks. And the judge went, no, I've said no more evidence now. And
I go, no.
Shame. We were totally up for it. But I wonder...
Let it not be said we weren't.
I wonder whether... I don't think it probably will be the case, but since his DNA will be taken and will presumably be put into some kind of law enforcement system, whether it might be checked against unknown samples from previous crimes.
In a kind of CSI
because he was very careful not to give his DNA in the case that he was asked for it in.
Yes.
So that might be interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking, I just went to absence of evidence is no evidence. But hey, what the hell? Yeah.
One thing that a lot of people have been saying is that it's a shame, in a way, that this is the case that is coming first, because the case in Georgia, the grand jury in Georgia, is looking at a potentially more serious crime. Well, one that is linked more specifically to kind of election fraud and that kind of stuff. I don't mind him what he's indicted for. I'm really pleased he's been indicted. But also, if he was convicted of this one, and it is a felony, then when he is indicted and for the one in Georgia, if he's convicted of that one, the sentencing guidelines for someone who is already a convicted felon are significantly stronger.
So
if he's already been convicted of a felony, then he would be much more likely to actually see prison time. In Georgia for that crime. So maybe it's not so bad.
Every cloud has a silver lining. Well, and also yes, exactly, because it has no bearing on whether. So this case would have no bearing on whether that case could be made to stick.
No,
but it will have a bearing on what the sentencing would be, which would have been lighter, perforce. Otherwise, so that's all right.
Yeah, because he's unbelievably never been convicted of a crime up to now. So
yeah. Well, he has had Ron Cohn in his corner for all this time. So yes, who was convicted of crimes.
I mean, it's very much up in the air because, as I said, it's so new. We don't know a lot of the details. We don't know what the charges are yet. We don't know what his plans are to surrender. It is the first time it's ever happened. No sitting or former president has ever been indicted on any charge ever. So,
wow,
it's all quite new.
Really?
Yeah, it's the first one.
Wow. Well, I apologise for my sense of surprise because that does imply that, surely there have been presidents of the US that have done things that warrant being arrested.
I mean, Nixon was famously pardoned, obviously, for the definite crimes that he absolutely committed.
Yeah. True enough. Yeah. When I was thinking about that, so he was pardoned by Ford, wasn't he?
Yeah, he thought it was for the good of the country.
What a fool he was.
Yeah.
Was he a single-term president, Ford?
I think he was, actually, yeah. But also, at the time, I think that was... A lot of people agreed that was the best thing. Certainly, if he hadn't done it and Nixon had been charged, it would have made this whole process a lot easier because there would have been more precedent and more people being able to call back to that and say, look, this is what we did with Nixon, so it's fine to do the same thing. Obviously,
yes,
exactly. This is being yelled about as just a political stunt and purely for political purposes because, when you commit a crime, it's unfair if you happen to be of the other party to the currently sitting president for them to actually then do anything about it.
Yeah. Because whilst it's true to say no one's above the law, that doesn't apply to previous Republican presidents who, well, let's face it, we know, when it comes to storing top secret, oh my God, there's so many things that he could be done for. How lovely. This could be the first straw, not the last straw. It's like that game of, it's like pick up sticks or there was a brilliant game in the 70s and 80s here, probably 60s as well, called Kaplunk, where you've got, it's like pick up sticks and you've got a whole bunch of straws pushed through a cylinder above which there are marbles, glass marbles. So the straws are supporting the marbles and you've got to pull out the straw and not spill the marbles. So he's kind of, it's a bit like that, isn't it? There's each single straws are being noticed and teased out of that, and eventually it will all just come down. So all that kind of, there will be an avalanche of legislative things that will just come. Yeah, they will just go. So we've got him on that. There's this, and then there's the top secret documents.
I mean, the Jack Smith investigation, that's still very much going on, and there's a lot. Smith, did he subpoena or just question Evan Corcoran, Trump's lawyer, the one who drafted the memo that said that they had handed over everything before the FBI went in and found all the stuff they hadn't handed over.
All the stuff.
So he talked
when we
to
said
Jack
everything,
Smith this week.
We only meant everything that we handed over. We handed over.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the crimes that it's likely he will be indicted for over the coming months.
Yeah.
And they'll say the same thing about all of them. They'll say, this is completely political and I can't believe that they're being so unfair to the presumptive Republican candidate.
Yeah, former president.
The fun thing is, apparently, while he he obviously said that he would be arrested last Tuesday, the 21st.
Yeah.
That was based on nothing, based on just kind of he'd heard a rumour or something. And the previous day there was some announcement of coordination between law enforcement agencies that they were preparing, like conducting security assessments and preparing for what the logistics would be if an indictment were to come from the Manhattan grand jury particularly, because it looked like they were reaching that point. So that night, or early the following morning, was when he said, "I'm going to be arrested," or the your favourite Republican candidate or whatever is going to be arrested on Tuesday. Yeah. But that was not announced by anyone other than him, and so when it didn't happen, somehow he convinced himself and quite a lot of his followers, that meant that Alvin Bragg didn't have anything and was backing off because he hadn't arrested him on the day that Trump claimed, based on nothing, that he would be arrested.
Yeah. So it was a proper... if we didn't know any better, that would have been a QAnon drop, wouldn't it? Because that would have been, so, yes, this is going to happen, and people all turn up. Well, not many people turned up. And to protest about the arrest, which then didn't happen, and then they would just say, you see, it didn't happen, ha-ha.
We beat them.
Yes, we win. Yeah, it's just a weaponization of the injustice system, and no. No, hang on a minute. You made that bit up, and then when it didn't happen, which we had nothing to do with because we weren't going to do it, you're now saying
it's some kind of victory.
Some kind of victory.
Yeah. But I think the reporting in the Washington Post suggests that he convinced himself that was proof that he wasn't going to be arrested then. Because they have said, this is just like 20 minutes ago, they said Trump had been in a good mood in recent days, joking about golden handcuffs, one person who spoke with him said. The team had increasingly come to think that the New York indictment was not coming for some time, if at all. But on Thursday night, tonight, one advisor described him as irritated and deflated, and his team as scrambling to figure out logistics. So
nice.
Yeah, they were taken aback by the news. Yeah, they didn't see it coming, and apparently he found it out from the New York Times that he had been indicted. So
and yet they didn't. So they didn't see it coming, and yet he saw it coming.
Well, he was a weak. He pretended he saw it coming.
And then, in order to try and steal a march. Yeah,
and then when it didn't come, he was like, "Ha! I'm not going to be arrested." And then they went, "Yeah, well, give it a couple of days."
Message for Mr. Trump. Yeah. Wasn't he talking about death and destruction, potential death and destruction?
Yeah, that was on the 24th, last Friday. Yeah, he said it was something like, "How can someone indict someone for a crime they know they didn't commit, especially when they know that it's likely to cause all kinds of death and destruction from that person's supporters?" And couldn't be more clearly a call for violence.
Yeah, mentioning no names, but if someone, was arrested for something like they clearly didn't commit.
I mean, that came the day after he posted a picture of himself. Well, two pictures, one of Alvin Bragg and one of Trump. Like the picture of Trump next to Alvin Bragg holding a baseball bat, looking at and kind of as if it's swinging towards Alvin Bragg. Like very much juxtaposed in a violence kind of way. With a look, here's what the guy looks like that I'd quite like you to do violence to. To his supporters in a way. That was the day before.
Yes, those tourists that were at the White House.
And on the day after that picture, the day that he tweeted about death and destruction, Alvin Bragg received an envelope with white powder and a note saying, "Alvin, I'm going to kill you." It turned out not to be dangerous powder, but it was clearly that was the message that they was intending to send. So he's calling for violence, and his followers are prepared to do violence. But fortunately, not as many of them as were prepared to do violence on January 6th, because a lot of those people have been arrested, and and a lot of the ones that are left are like, but a lot of the people on January 6th got arrested, and I don't fancy that. So I'm not going to go to the protest, especially when some right-wing voices, and I'm surprised this didn't come from the left-wing actually, but maybe it was kind of suggested, whispered in someone's ear, but some right-wing voices were kind of saying, don't go to protests because it's probably an FBI sting. So don't go and protest on Trump's behalf. The FBI are probably just kind of trying to get names of people they can then claim were violent rioters and arrest them.
Wow.
So as it turned out, hardly anyone turned up to the protests.
Because it's a double bluff. Because it's not Trump calling for support, it's an FBI sting. Don't go, because if you go, you'll get arrested. Wow.
Brilliant.
so good, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's definitely an attempt by Trump to control the narrative based on nothing whatsoever, and yet when the narrative actually catches up with him, like the real world narrative said, yeah, you thought you'd be arrested. Actually, yeah, we are going to arrest you. And they're completely unprepared for it because they thought they were in control of it. It turns out they're not, so they don't quite know what to do because Trump and his acolytes' entire machinery is based on just Trump's whim, and he's sure and certain knowledge that he's got a support base that will do things that he tells them to do, but though he will deny telling them that he did it.
Because he's not saying, I want you to kill everyone. He's saying, it'd be a shame if everyone got killed.
Yeah, particularly this guy with, say, a baseball bat that I just happened to be holding in the shot next to him. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, wouldn't it be really bad? It's like Doug and Dinsdale Piranha, isn't it? They go, this is a nice office. Yeah. It'd be a shame if this got damaged. Something happened to it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah.
So we will obviously be paying very close attention to this.
Oh yeah, with gleeful rubbing of hands.
Again, very pleased that back when he got voted out, we didn't go, it's probably run its course now, this podcast, isn't it?
We should probably
nothing else to talk about anymore.
But all of the stuff that was piled up then, because he thought he was, not unlike Boris Johnson, king of the world, could get away with everything. And then the grown-ups, the actual system, whilst being a bit slow at being able to react in the moment to prevent things that he's done, electorally or kind of legally, and all of those things that he just kind of did, and the system wasn't set up to rapidly counter it. It's now just been rumbling on in the way that the system does, in order to come at him with the full force of undeniable law, and just go, okay, worm your way out of this one, matey. Yeah, and we will enjoy watching the worm squirm. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
I'm sure that in one of your frequent re-listens to our back catalogue, you've stumbled upon episode 92, where we talked about Ron DeSantis setting up a special law enforcement department called the Office of Election Crimes and Security. Well, it's been running for over a year now, and it's burned through its initial $1.2 million it was allocated, despite only filling 3 of the 15 staff positions they were allocated. Nonetheless, DeSantis recently asked the legislature for an increased budget of $3.1 million and 27 staff positions. Is this due to the huge success they've had so far? Great question. They sure have investigated a lot of complaints. 3,000 investigations were opened in the first year. Around half of those were immediately closed because they couldn't even find enough bullshit to pretend a crime had happened. Of the remaining cases, officials announced that they would be charging 20 people with voter fraud, almost all of whom were former felons who thought they were allowed to vote because the state sent them voter registration cards. At least 3 cases have been dismissed on a technicality, that technicality being that they didn't commit a crime that the state prosecutor can actually charge them for. Other charges have been dropped. One case ended in a plea deal in which the defendant pleaded no contest, which means she didn't admit to any wrongdoing, and in return the state didn't punish her at all or even make her pay court costs, but somehow still got to claim it as a successful prosecution. In the only case that's actually made it to court, a man was acquitted of illegal voting charges but convicted of lying on his voter registration form. And hey, if a partial win in one single case isn't enough to convince the state legislature to triple the office's budget, then, wait, no, it's Florida. That'll definitely be enough. Yeah.
It isn't shocking that these ideas are being thrown around, one source told Rolling Stone magazine. People who are still there want it to make money, but it's just insane brainstorming to figure out how. Nope, it's not Twitter, but it's lagging behind Gab, Parler, Rumble and Trump's own Truth Social, social media, whatever the socially acceptable word for the opposite of giant is. Getter. Self-proclaimed strong influencer over the company, Guo Wengui, a billionaire fugitive from the Chinese Communist Party, has been coming up with fistfuls of ideas, knocking several out each day, as it were. One idea firmly in Guo's hand is to remake the site to add an online clearinghouse for human sperm from men who haven't taken any of the vaccines against COVID-19. In a February 22nd live stream, he announced all the fellow fighters' sperm and eggs will be put up for auction on Getter between June 1st and June 6, 2023. He went on to claim to have amassed nearly 6,000 eggs and millions of sperm from unvaccinated donors. How did he count them millions? Getter is understandably keen to distance himself from Guo, possibly because he was arrested by the FBI on Wednesday morning on federal charges that he orchestrated up to $1 billion in fraud, largely by targeting retail investors with phony opportunities and using the money to buy luxury items. But also because maybe Guo's theories that unvaccinated purebloods will one day be called upon for mass breeding efforts, usual basement-dwelling online wanker fantasy stuff, and his assertion that the auction will be the most meaningful event of this year, auctioning off the best sperm and eggs, which of course include my own sperm, was just too much to swallow. One of the Getter staff told Rolling Stone, "It's the most ludicrous fucking thing to come out of pro-Trump social media in a long time, and that is saying something. It looks like the COVID unvaxxed jizz market plan might just be one in the eye for presidential nomination coming soon, after all."
Okay, it's very telling that he's specified millions of sperm. Like he's not gone as far as to say billions.
No.
So it's millions. Yeah. And in terms of number of sperm donors that equates to, in a milliliter of semen, there's 100 million sperm.
Yeah.
So 10 mils would be 1 billion. So so that's the amount of unvaccinated sperm they have.
Yeah. So in terms of number of donors, probably just him then.
Probably just him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even at that, not a lot, only one visit to the cup, as it were.
Yes, yeah, his cup's not running over.
Not runneth over, no.
No. But it's only the best sperm.
Jesus Christ!
Which of course includes his own sperm. Yeah, because
that's a very niche market, though, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But he's convinced that one day they will all be counted upon to repopulate the world.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he's been talking Getter into doing this in a not dissimilar way to the way he's been doing stuff which led to his arrest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've talked a bit about the Fox News Dominion lawsuit and its amazing emails and messages that came out in Discovery. And I expressed scepticism as to whether Fox News viewers would care at all that they're being lied to openly. Well, I'm very happy to say that my scepticism in this case was misplaced, and there are actually a few Fox News viewers who mind being called dumb cousin fucking terrorists. Not many, but a few. According to a survey by Variety, 21% of Fox News viewers find they trust the information provided by the channel less after seeing concrete proof that all the hosts are actively lying to them on a daily basis about the most fundamental issues of democracy, which is somehow simultaneously shockingly low and reassuringly high. A full 45% continue to trust the lying liars who lied to them. I assume because while the information itself is false, at least it demonises the people they hate, so continuing to believe it makes them feel happy. Meanwhile, following the litany of messages from their favourite TV hosts saying the exact opposite of what they said on the air, 16% of Fox News viewers now have a less favourable opinion of Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham, while 52% have apparently no complaints about being treated like credulous morons by stochastic terrorists who only take occasional breaks from lying so they can sell more lumpy pillows and life insurance.
Well, not much of a break from lying. To go and then sell lumpy pillows and life insurance.
Just different lies, really.
Just different lies, yeah. It's a busman's holiday, really, isn't it? Yeah, I may be lying in my spare time. Yeah. I'm sure there was an episode of The West Wing where the entire White House was in chaotic uproar as they tried to track down an official foreign gift that had been borrowed, sold and rebought throughout the hour's airtime. Boy, was it tense. Transparency, respect and the credibility of the entire American nation were at stake. It was gripping. Pure fiction, of course, much like Trump's excuses for the fact that a life-size portrait of Trump from El Salvador and a set of golf clubs from Japan are missing from the Trump administration's White House gift ledger. Far be it from us to commit the fallacy of, well, it's the kind of thing that would go missing because Trump. It does seem oddly fitting, shall we say, that those are the items not seen entering the White House or the National Archives. A House Oversight Committee report reveals that these are among more than 100 foreign gifts, with a total value of nearly $300,000 that Trump and his family failed to report to the State Department in violation of federal law. Whilst Trump repeatedly told advisors that gifts given to him during the presidency were his and did not belong to the federal government, natch, the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act of 1966 prohibits officials from personally keeping gifts from foreign entities worth more than $415. And if an official wishes to retain a gift, they have the option of paying full value. While there are no records of Trump personally purchasing any of the foreign gifts he receives, other family members did legally purchase gifts. Trump's portrait, which Jared Kushner declared very nice, doesn't appear on any White House purchase documents after it left El Salvador as a gift for the White House, nor is it in the White House. Investigators concluded certain records suggest the portrait may have been moved to Florida as property of the former president in July 2021, alongside several boxes of personal top-secret documents, no doubt. However, in a reassuringly Boris Johnson-esque turn of phrase, the Director of Correspondence for the Office of Donald Trump certified full compliance with the final disposition of gifts in April 2021. So that's not a tale we need assume then.
If there's one thing I learned from Knight Rider, it's that big hair, a leather jacket and a nearly indestructible talking car are all you need to fight crime. But also that one man can make a difference. That's an ideal embraced by Florida's conservatives who truly believe in the power of the individual. Take, for example, the individual parent who looked at Michelangelo's David, a 17-foot masterpiece of Renaissance art depicting the biblical hero who represents the entire concept of standing up against powerful oppressors, and noticed it had a dick, and is therefore pornography. Ironically, this person is clearly a Philistine, and therefore David's natural enemy. However, since it's Florida, this fucking hick wasn't dismissed as the drooling idiot they so clearly are when they complained to the school that their 6th grader was being taught that penises exist during a lesson on Renaissance art. Instead, the school board fired the principal of the school for not warning the ignorant arsehole that their precious little tween would be looking at one of the most important and revered artworks of all time in art class. Not to be outdone, another individual Florida parent fucked it up for everyone else by complaining about the 1998 Disney movie Ruby Bridges, which tells the true story of the first black student in an integrated elementary school in New Orleans in the 60s. The movie has been shown every year during Black History Month in elementary schools in Pinellas County, until one parent complained that the use of racial slurs and scenes of white people threatening Ruby as she entered a school might result in students learning that white people hate black people. Rather than saying, well, duh, and telling her to fuck off, the school banned the film until a review committee can assess it. Because nothing says Black History Month like letting a white woman dictate whether children are allowed to learn about racism.
That good old GOP stance of dagnabbit, pesky big government and messing with our local healthcare laws will show 'em has turned out to be a bit of an unholstered firearm discharge into the foot of current Republican legislation around banning of abortions in Wyoming and Ohio. During the Obama-era introduction of healthcare access for all, Republican administrations were so incensed at the interference in state legislation that in 2012 they passed an amendment providing that each competent adult shall have the right to make his or her own healthcare decisions in Wyoming, which led a judge there, recently to temporarily block a state law that would make performing nearly any abortion in that state a felony. Among other things, Judge Owens rejected the state's argument that the healthcare amendment was only adopted to push back against the Affordable Care Act and should not be construed to protect abortion rights. Ohio's anti-Obamacare amendment provides that no state law shall prohibit the purchase or sale of healthcare or health insurance, nor may it impose a penalty or fine for the sale or purchase of healthcare or health insurance. Thus, as long as a patient seeking an abortion pays for that treatment, the Ohio amendment appears to provide very robust protection to abortion rights. Whilst we can enjoy the sight of Yosemite Sam-style lawmakers cursing their past selves under the guise of, "Oh, that Obama," they'll no doubt turn their narrow, impotent, tiny minds to working out some other ways to control bodies that are not their own. For the moment, however, let that be a lesson that a state constitution is a foolish thing to change for the sake of a political stunt, much less let it run for president.
While Trump is the frontrunner for the 2024 GOP nomination, Mike Pence still seems to think it's worth being out in public on the off chance people might want him to be president. He hasn't announced his campaign yet, although he's travelling around the country loudly not announcing it, and he's polling at around 6 or 7%, which is surprisingly high, given that nobody likes him. According to an Atlantic article looking at Republican focus groups of two-time Trump voters, those who still support Trump blame Pence for not having the guts to overturn the election, while those who don't want Trump to run in 2024 say that Pence is tainted by his association to Trump and hasn't got a chance. Focus group members said things like, "He's only going to get the vote from his family and I'm not even sure they like him." So why is he still polling around 6%? Sarah Longwell, the political consultant who ran the focus groups, speculates that there's a, quote, cohort of GOP voters who are not particularly engaged, who don't want Trump to run again, and Pence is the only other name they know. Ouch. Despite all this, Pence is currently 66-1 to win the presidency, according to Bet365, while the only Democrat to have officially announced her candidacy, crystal-loving nutter Marianne Williamson, is at 200-1. Just to put that in perspective, here is a short, real list of people Bet365 considers more likely to become president than Marianne Williamson. Stephen Colbert, Tucker Carlson, George Clooney, Eric Trump, Meghan Markle, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Fucking ouch.
Eric Trump. Oh, God. It's been a rather depressing fortnight in British politics. Yeah, right, when is it not? Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, was photographed laughing demonically next to a refugee camp in Rwanda, and then accused the press, who didn't fawn and slaver over the righteousness of it all and her, i.e. those papers that weren't invited on the trip, i.e. everyone except the Daily Mail, of disrespecting the fine, upstanding, not corrupt and despicable at all regime of Rwanda. You know, if you don't want to be accused of laughing maniacally by a refugee camp, then don't be photographed laughing maniacally at a refugee camp. Just saying. Meanwhile, on the left, is it left though? Speaking of foolish political stunts, Keir Starmer has insisted that Jeremy Corbyn, who has won every election he ever stood for on behalf of the Labour Party in his London constituency since the 1980s, be deselected from standing in the upcoming elections on behalf of the Labour Party. I'm a bit conflicted because I hope Corbyn will stand as an independent, and certain that he won't, because he nobly won't want to completely screw Labour's election chances. I look forward to this year's Glastonbury crowd singing Starmer's name to the tune of Seven Nation Army in celebration of the largest swelling of support for socialist values since, ironically, Tony Blair's election in 1997. Once, just once, it will be nice for Labour to win on its own merits, not just because the right are so heinously awful and self-serving that the electorate is so sick of them they'll vote for anyone or anything who's not them. With that in mind, vote for me as I stand in the election for my local town council in May.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this week. You'll find the show notes at fallaciostrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we use a fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell one other person in person about how much they'd like our podcast. And you can support the show at patreon.com/ftrump, just like our strawman level patrons, Don Tuvey, Renee Z, Schmutz, Mark Reike, and Amber R. Buchanan, who told us when we met her at QED, we can just call her Amber, and our true Scotsman level patrons, Stephen Bickle, Janet Uetta, Kaz Tui, Andrew Howe, Max Beaver, and our top patron, Lauren. Thank you so much for your continued support. It really is very much appreciated.
You can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Fallacious Trump.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.
So, yeah, I actually am standing for election. Yeah.
Cool.
I know. It happened today. Came back in and they both said, do you want to stand for local council? I went, no, not really. and at no point did I say yes. I got, but now.
And somehow they've made posters.
Somehow they made posters, yeah. They took a photo of me. I had to write some blurb because they said, oh, yeah, so can you give us your email address and your phone number and blah, blah, blah. And then it's on the brochure. And I went, really? I don't think I should be using my... particularly because I'm going to be out of the country for 2 months. So if constituents want to contact
these fucking local politicians.
I know. I know. I'm going to be on holiday, mate. That's it, yeah. I'm taking a leaf out of the ex-Prime Minister's book. And
so you're not even going to be in the country for the election, are you?
No.
You're not going to be doing hustings or anything?
No, nothing.
Honestly.
No. I'm just a paper candidate. Yeah.
So is there any danger of you actually getting elected, or is it going to be a Kevin Phillips Bond kind of situation?
Oh, well, that's secretly is what I'm hoping for. Yeah. But I can't make the count because I would so love to be there. I just go, well, as I always say. And so what does it involve? They went, you don't have to do anything. It's just... we're not selling it
God,
very
really
well.
Sounds like local government's fucked, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're not selling it very well.
They'll basically just get anyone to do it, and you really don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and we haven't got. There's not much power at town level. Yeah, nothing. But you do get to wear a gown once a year. Yeah, basically, you might as well do it. Like, the fuck? Yeah.